The airport smelled like burnt coffee and recycled air. But Marcus Webb barely noticed as he stared at the text from his assistant reminding him about the Riverside Summer Festival happening this weekend in his hometown of Maple Ridge. Population 8,000 and shrinking. He had not been back in 12 years. Not since the day after his college graduation when he'd driven away with everything he owned stuffed into a beaten Honda Civic and a business plan scribbled on legal pads. Now he was 34, the CEO of Webb Manufacturing Solutions, a company that specialized in sustainable packaging for the food and beverage industry. His net worth had crossed into 8 figures 2 years ago when they'd secured contracts with 3 major grocery chains. And last quarter, they'd broken records with $60 million in revenue. The flight from Chicago to the small regional airport outside Maple Ridge took 90 minutes. Marcus spent most of it reviewing acquisition proposals, but his mind kept drifting to the festival. His mother had been calling for months, asking when he would visit, reminding him that she was not getting any younger and that his father's health was not what it used to be. The festival had given him an excuse to finally say yes, though he'd framed it as a business trip to scout potential manufacturing locations in rural areas with lower overhead costs. When he stepped off the plane, the June heat hit him like a wall. This was different from Chicago heat. This was the kind of humidity that made your shirt stick to your back within minutes. His rental car, a sleek black sedan that felt absurdly out of place, was waiting in the lot. He drove through town with the windows down, taking in the changes and the things that had stayed exactly the same. Miller's Hardware still occupied the corner of Main and 3rd. The old movie theater had been converted into an antique mall. The diner where he'd worked weekends during high school was now a coffee shop with Edison bulbs and reclaimed wood everywhere. But the bones of the town remained, the wide streets lined with maples that gave the place its name, the brick buildings with their faded painted advertisements for products that no longer existed. His parents' house sat on Elm Street, a white 2-story with blue shutters and a porch that wrapped around the front. His mother was outside before he'd even turned off the engine, wiping her hands on her apron and beaming. "Marcus, oh, look at you." Linda Webb pulled him into a hug that smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. "You're too thin. Are you eating?" "I eat plenty, Mom," he laughed, hugging her back. At 6'2", with broad shoulders from the gym routine he maintained religiously, he was hardly wasting away, but mothers saw what they wanted to see. His father appeared in the doorway, moving slower than Marcus remembered but with the same steady presence. Robert Webb had worked at the grain mill for 40 years before retiring, and his handshake still had the strength of someone who'd spent his life doing physical labor. "Good to have you home, son." The house looked exactly as Marcus remembered. Same floral couch, same family photos on the mantel, same creaky 3rd step on the stairs. His old room had been converted into a sewing space for his mother, but she'd made up the guest room for him. Over dinner, pot roast with carrots and potatoes that tasted like childhood, his mother caught him up on 12 years of town gossip compressed into an hour. The Hendersons had divorced. The Patels, who owned the gas station, had a grandson at MIT. Sarah Chen was teaching at the elementary school now. Tommy Rodriguez had taken over his father's construction business. "And the festival tomorrow should be wonderful," his mother said, passing him the rolls. "They've expanded it. Goes all weekend now. There's a carnival, live music. All the local businesses set up booths. You remember how it used to be just the one day?" Marcus nodded, though his memories of the festival were hazy. He'd usually been working during it, saving money for college, too focused on getting out to appreciate what was right in front of him. "You should go," his father said. "Walk around, see people. You've been working too hard." That was rich coming from a man who'd worked 60-hour weeks for decades, but Marcus did not argue. Maybe it would be good to see the town, remember where he'd come from. It might even be useful for the speech his publicist wanted him to give at the Chamber of Commerce about supporting rural economies. The next morning, Marcus woke to birdsong instead of traffic, sunlight streaming through curtains instead of filtered through skyscraper glass. He pulled on jeans and a white t-shirt, clothes that felt strange after years of suits and tailored shirts. His mother made pancakes and bacon, and by 10 he was walking down Main Street toward the park where the festival was being set up. The town had turned out in force. Vendors lined the streets, selling everything from handmade jewelry to kettle corn. A stage was set up near the gazebo where a bluegrass band was doing a sound check. Kids ran past with balloons and cotton candy. The air smelled like fried dough in summer. Marcus walked slowly, hands in his pockets, anonymous in his casual clothes and sunglasses. Nobody recognized him, or if they did, they were too polite to approach. He'd left as one of them and come back as something else. Someone who wore expensive watches and flew business class. Someone whose picture occasionally appeared in trade publications under headlines about innovative young CEOs. He was debating whether to get a corn dog when he saw the lemonade stand. It was not the stand itself that caught his attention, though it was charming in its simplicity. Just a folding table with a hand-painted sign and a glass pitcher sweating in the heat. It was the girl behind it. She was laughing at something a customer had said, her whole face lighting up with genuine joy. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, sun-kissed skin, wearing a yellow sundress that matched the lemons painted on her sign. She could not have been more than 25, and there was something about her that made Marcus stop walking. She handed the customer their lemonade with a smile that could have powered the whole festival, then turned to straighten her display of cookies, also homemade if the slightly uneven shapes were any indication. The sign said, "Emma's Lemonade and Baked Goods" in cheerful letters, with smaller text advertising all profits go to the Maple Ridge Youth Center. Marcus found himself walking toward the stand before he'd made a conscious decision to do so. Up close, she was even prettier. Hazel eyes, a dusting of freckles across her nose, hands that moved with practiced efficiency as she counted change for another customer. When she looked up at him, her smile was warm and welcoming. "Hi, what can I get you?" "Lemonade," Marcus said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. "Please." "Best decision you'll make all day," she said, already pouring. "Fair warning, it's pretty tart. I don't believe in drowning lemons in sugar." "Sounds perfect." She handed him a cup, their fingers brushing for a moment. "That'll be $3. All proceeds go to the youth center. We're trying to raise money for new sports equipment." Marcus pulled out his wallet, acutely aware that the bills inside were mostly hundreds. He found a 20 and handed it over. "Keep the change." Her eyes widened. "Are you sure? That's really generous." "I'm sure. Good cause." She studied him for a moment, her head tilting slightly. "You look familiar. Did you go to Maple Ridge High?" "Long time ago," Marcus admitted. "Class of 2010. Marcus Webb." Recognition dawned slowly. "Marcus Webb, you were valedictorian. You gave that speech about how success meant having the courage to leave comfort behind." He winced. "You remember that?" "I was a freshman, but yeah, it made an impression." She laughed, the sound like wind chimes. "I'm Emma Sullivan. I was probably just a random kid in the hallway to you back then. The name tugged at his memory. Sullivan, your dad owned the bookstore. Still does. Though he's mostly selling online these days, foot traffic is not what it used to be. She gestured around. Hence the lemonade stand, multiple income streams and all that. Marcus took a sip of the lemonade. It was tart, perfectly balanced with a hint of something else he could not quite place. This is incredible. What's the secret? If I told you, it would not be a secret anymore. Her smile turned playful. But I will say that fresh mint makes all the difference. Most people don't bother with the little touches. A family approached the stand, kids clamoring for cookies, and Emma turned her attention to them with the same warmth she'd shown Marcus. He stepped aside but did not leave, sipping his lemonade and watching her work. She knew everyone by name, asked about sick grandmothers and baseball games, made each person feel like they were the most important customer of the day. When the rush cleared, she glanced at him, surprised he was still there. "Did you need something else?" "Just enjoying the lemonade," Marcus said. And wondering how someone ends up running a lemonade stand at a town festival when they could probably be doing anything else. Emma laughed, not offended. Bold question from someone who's lurking by a lemonade stand instead of enjoying the festival. But I'll bite. I teach second grade at Maple Ridge Elementary during the year. Summers, I help my dad with the bookstore, do some tutoring, and volunteer with the youth center. The stand is a fun way to raise money and see people. Not everything has to be about career advancement and maximizing potential. There was no judgment in her voice, but Marcus felt the words land anyway. When was the last time he'd done something just because it was fun? When had he last volunteered for anything that did not come with networking opportunities? "That wasn't a criticism of you," Emma added quickly, reading his expression. "I'm sure whatever you're doing in Chicago is important. How did you know I was in Chicago? Small town." "Your mom talks about you at church. CEO of some manufacturing company, making the big bucks and changing the world." She said it lightly, but there was something in her eyes he could not quite read. "It's impressive." "It's exhausting," Marcus said, the honesty surprising him. Emma's expression softened. "I bet. Want a cookie? On the house." "You look like you could use some sugar to balance out the lemon." He accepted a chocolate chip cookie that turned out to be perfectly chewy with just the right amount of salt. "You're really good at this." "Thanks. Baking is my therapy, that and running, but running doesn't produce delicious results." She glanced at the line forming again. "I should probably—" "Right." "Of course." Marcus stepped back. "Thanks for the lemonade and the cookie." "Thanks for the donation. Come back anytime." Marcus wandered through the festival for another hour, but his mind kept drifting back to the lemonade stand, to Emma's easy smile, and the way she gently challenged his assumptions without being confrontational, to the fact that she seemed genuinely happy doing exactly what she was doing, with no apologies and no second-guessing. He'd built his entire adult life around the opposite principle. Around striving and achieving, around quarterly earnings and market expansion, around being more and doing more until the doing became everything, and the being got lost somewhere along the way. That evening, over dinner with his parents, his mother asked about his day. "I walked around the festival. It was nice, bigger than I remembered." "Did you see anyone you knew?" his father asked. "Emma Sullivan. She had a lemonade stand." His mother's face lit up. "Oh, Emma is wonderful, such a sweet girl. She's been teaching at the elementary school for 3 years now. The kids adore her. And she does so much volunteer work. Her father is so proud. She's single too," his father added with the subtlety of a brick. Smart, pretty, good heart. Can't ask for much more than that. Dad. Marcus shook his head, but he was smiling. What? I'm just making conversation. You're not getting any younger, and your mother wants grandchildren sometime before she's too old to enjoy them. Robert, his mother swatted his arm, but she was smiling too. Don't pressure him. But Marcus, honey, when was your last relationship? I've been busy. Too busy for a life. His mother's voice was gentle but firm. Success doesn't mean much if you don't have anyone to share it with. Marcus did not have an answer for that. His last serious relationship had ended 2 years ago when Rebecca, a corporate lawyer with ambitions that matched his own, had sat him down and said she could not do this anymore. Could not compete with his company for attention. Could not build a life with someone who was married to his work. He'd been relieved more than heartbroken, which had probably proven her point. He helped his mother with the dishes, then took a walk through the neighborhood as the sun set. The houses were mostly dark except for the glow of television screens. Somewhere a dog barked. Someone was grilling, the smell of charcoal and meat hanging in the humid air. His phone buzzed with emails, problems that needed solving, decisions that could not wait. But for the first time in years, Marcus silenced it and kept walking. The next morning was Sunday, and his mother insisted he come to church. Marcus had not been to a service in over a decade, but he did not argue. He pulled on dress pants and a button-down shirt and drove them to First Presbyterian, the white church with the tall steeple that had been the town's landmark for 150 years. The sanctuary was smaller than he remembered, the pews more worn. But the light streaming through the stained glass windows was the same, painting everything in blues and golds and reds. His mother led him to their usual pew, third from the front on the right, and people turned to smile and wave. The service started with hymns sung slightly off-key but with genuine enthusiasm. The pastor, a young woman Marcus did not recognize, gave a sermon about finding purpose in service to others. And when it was time for announcements, Emma Sullivan stood up from her seat across the aisle and walked to the front. She was wearing a simple blue dress, her hair down around her shoulders, and when she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the sanctuary. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to give an update on the Youth Center fundraiser. Yesterday's lemonade stand raised $473, which is incredible. Thank you to everyone who stopped by and to those who donated supplies. We're about halfway to our goal of $15,000 for the new equipment. The festival continues today, and I'll be back out there if anyone wants more lemonade or cookies. Also, we're still looking for volunteers to help with the summer reading program. If you have a few hours a week to read with kids, please see me after the service. Thank you. She smiled at the congregation, then returned to her seat. Marcus found himself watching her, noting the way she greeted the older woman beside her, the way she bowed her head for the closing prayer, the unself-conscious grace in her movements. After the service, his mother was immediately absorbed into conversations with her friends, comparing casserole recipes and discussing the upcoming potluck. His father was talking to someone about fishing. Marcus stood awkwardly to the side until he felt a tap on his shoulder. Emma smiled up at him, her eyes bright. Twice in 2 days. Either you really love Maple Ridge, or my lemonade made quite an impression. The lemonade was definitely a factor, Marcus said, returning her smile. That was a great update. Sounds like you're doing good work. Trying to. The youth center means a lot to this community, gives kids somewhere safe to go, something positive to do. A lot of them don't have many options otherwise. She paused. Actually, can I ask you something? Sure. You run a big company, right? You must know about fundraising, grants, corporate sponsorships. Would you be willing to look at our proposal? We've been applying for funding, but we keep getting rejected. I think maybe we're not framing it right. Marcus should have said no. He was only in town for a few more days. He had actual work to do. But looking at Emma's hopeful expression, he found himself nodding. I'd be happy to take a look. Can you email it to me? Her whole face brightened. Really? That would be amazing. Thank you so much. She pulled out her phone. What's your email? He gave it to her, and she typed it in with quick, efficient movements. I'll send it over this afternoon. Are you around this week? Maybe we could meet up and you could give me some feedback. I'm here until Friday. Perfect. How about coffee on Tuesday? There's a place downtown that's actually decent. Grounds for thought. 10 in the morning. That works. Great, she grinned at him. And if you come by the stand today, I have strawberry lemonade, game changer. Marcus did go back to the festival that afternoon. He told himself it was to support a good cause, but he knew he was lying. He wanted to see Emma again, wanted to watch her interact with people, wanted another hit of whatever it was about her that made him feel lighter. The strawberry lemonade was indeed a game changer. He bought 2 cups and left another 20 in the donation jar. Emma caught his eye and mouthed, "Thank you," while serving a customer, and Marcus felt something warm settle in his chest. Monday, he spent the day with his parents. His father took him to see the new community center they'd built on the edge of town, replacing the old one that had burned down 5 years ago. His mother dragged him to the grocery store, where she ran into approximately everyone she'd ever met and introduced Marcus with barely concealed pride. "This is my son, Marcus. He's a CEO in Chicago. Very successful." Marcus smiled and shook hands and answered the same questions about what exactly his company did, how he liked Chicago, whether he was seeing anyone. By the end of it, he was exhausted but also strangely content. These were his people, even if he'd spent years trying to become someone different. That evening, he opened his laptop and found Emma's email. The proposal was well-intentioned but, as she'd suspected, not well-framed. It was too emotional, not enough data. It focused on what the youth center needed rather than what it could provide. The budget was unclear. The impact metrics were vague. Marcus spent 3 hours rewriting it. He restructured the narrative, added placeholders for statistics Emma would need to gather, clarified the budget with line items and justifications, and included a section on measurable outcomes that funders would want to see. When he was done, he had a document that looked professional and compelling, the kind of proposal that would get serious consideration. He sent it back with notes explaining his changes and suggestions for next steps, then closed his laptop feeling more satisfied than he had after closing deals worth millions. Tuesday morning, Marcus arrived at Grounds for Thought 10 minutes early. The coffee shop was indeed decent, with exposed brick walls, local art for sale, and a menu that went beyond the basics. He ordered a black coffee and claimed a table by the window. Emma arrived right on time, slightly breathless, wearing jeans and a green tank top. "Sorry, I was at the bookstore and lost track of time. My dad needed help with a shipment." "No problem, I just got here." She ordered an iced vanilla latte, then joined him at the table. "Okay, so I read through your revisions. Marcus, holy cow. You completely transformed it. I feel like an idiot for not seeing all those problems." "Don't, you're a teacher, not a grant writer, different skill sets." "Still, this is amazing." I already started gathering the statistics you mentioned. The library has records on youth center usage, and the police department tracks juvenile incidents. I should be able to get everything we need. They spent the next hour going through the proposal section by section. Emma was a quick study, asking smart questions and taking detailed notes. She had a way of cutting through jargon to the heart of what mattered, and Marcus found himself explaining things more clearly than he usually did, stripping away the business speak he'd learned to hide behind. "This part about sustainability," Emma said, tapping her pen against the table. "You're saying we need to show we won't just burn through the money and come asking for more." "Exactly. Funders want to know their investment will have lasting impact. So you show them how the equipment will be maintained, how you'll fund ongoing programs, how you're building local partnerships." Emma nodded slowly. "We could partner with the high school. Their athletes could volunteer as coaches. The college 40 minutes away might send education majors to help with tutoring. And local businesses could sponsor specific programs." "Now you're thinking like a fundraiser," she laughed. "I'm thinking like someone who really wants new basketball hoops and some soccer goals that are not held together with duct tape. But seriously, thank you for this. You've probably just increased our chances tenfold. Happy to help." They talked for another 30 minutes, the conversation drifting from the proposal to their lives. Emma told him about her students, the funny things they said, the challenges of teaching in an underfunded rural school. Marcus found himself talking about his company, but differently than he usually did, less about the success metrics and more about why he'd started it, the idea that sustainable packaging could genuinely make a difference. "So you actually believe in what you're doing," Emma said. "It's not just about making money." "It started that way. The believing part came later when I saw the impact we could have." "That's good, important even." She glanced at her phone. "I should probably get going. I'm tutoring at 2, but this was really helpful. Would you want to come to the youth center sometime? See what you're helping fund? I'd like that." Emma's smile could have lit up the entire coffee shop. "How about tomorrow afternoon, say 4 o'clock? I'll be there." The youth center was a squat brick building on the south side of town, next to the park with the rusty playground equipment. Inside, it was clean but tired, with scuffed floors and walls that needed paint. But it was filled with kids, ranging from elementary age to teenagers, playing basketball on a court with a bent rim, reading in a corner with beanbag chairs, working on art projects at long tables. Emma greeted him at the door, wearing shorts and a youth center t-shirt, ponytail high on her head. "Welcome to organized chaos." She introduced him to the director, a weathered man named Frank who'd been running the place for 20 years on a shoestring budget and pure determination. Frank showed Marcus around, pointing out everything that needed fixing, everything they were trying to do with nothing. "Emma's been a godsend," Frank said. "She's here at least 3 days a week. Helps with homework, organizes activities, writes grants I don't have time for. Don't know what we'd do without her." Marcus watched Emma kneel down to help a little boy with his math homework, her patience infinite as she explained fractions using pieces of paper. The boy's face lit up when he understood, and Emma high-fived him with genuine enthusiasm. "She's something special," Marcus said. "That she is. This town is lucky to have her." Frank gave him a shrewd look. "You're Linda and Robert's boy, right? The one who made it big." "I do okay. Better than okay from what I hear. If you're ever looking to invest in something that matters, keep us in mind. We could do a lot with real funding." Marcus pulled out his wallet and handed Frank a check he'd written that morning. For the equipment fund, consider it a head start. Frank looked at the check and his eyebrows shot up. Son, this is for $10,000. Like I said, a head start. You're doing important work here. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. Emma appeared at his elbow, having witnessed the exchange. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Marcus, you didn't have to do that. I wanted to. She hugged him impulsively, quickly, then stepped back looking embarrassed. Sorry, I'm a hugger. But seriously, thank you. This is going to make such a difference. They walked out together as the sun was starting its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emma was quiet, walking with her hands in her pockets. Can I ask you something? She finally said. And feel free to tell me it's none of my business. Shoot. Why did you really come back? Your mom's been trying to get you here for years. Why now? Marcus considered lying, giving her the line about scouting locations, but Emma deserved honesty. I'm not sure, honestly. I think maybe I needed to remember who I was before I became what I am. And, have you remembered? I'm starting to. They reached her car, an old Subaru wagon with a faded paint job and a bumper sticker that said, I'd rather be rating. Emma turned to face him, leaning against the driver's door. For what it's worth, I think who you are and what you are might be closer than you think. You're successful, yeah, but you're also kind, generous. You care about things that matter. That's not common, especially in people who have made it big. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not, but I'm a pretty good judge of character. Comes with teaching 7-year-olds. They can smell insincerity a mile away, she smiled. Plus, you didn't have to help with the proposal. You definitely didn't have to write that check. You did it because you wanted to, because you saw something worth supporting. That tells me plenty. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something that had been locked down for years starting to crack open. Can I take you to dinner? Not as a thank you or a business thing. Just because I'd like to spend more time with you. Emma's smile was slow and warm. I'd like that too. They went to the nicest restaurant in town, which was an Italian place called Marcello's that had been there for 30 years. Red checkered tablecloths, candles in wine bottles, Frank Sinatra playing softly in the background. It was the kind of place Marcus would have dismissed in Chicago, but here it felt exactly right. Emma ordered chicken parmesan and told him stories about her students, about the 6-year-old who'd insisted the answer to every math problem was dinosaurs, about the girl who'd written a story about a princess who saved herself and did not need a prince at all. Marcus found himself laughing more than he had in months, maybe years. Emma had a gift for finding the humor and heart in everyday moments, for seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary. Your turn, she said, twirling pasta around her fork. Tell me something real about your life in Chicago, not the CEO stuff, something true. Marcus thought about it, sipping his wine. I have a corner office on the 40th floor with a view of the lake. It's objectively beautiful. But sometimes I'll be in a meeting, and I'll look out that window and realize I have no idea what the weather is like. I'm so sealed off from the world that I can watch a storm roll in and not feel a single drop of rain. Emma's expression was understanding, not pitying. That sounds lonely. It is. I didn't realize how much until I came back here. Is Chicago home? She asked quietly. I thought it was. Now I'm not sure I know what home means anymore. Emma reached across the table and took his hand, her fingers warm and sure. Home is where you can be yourself without armor, where people know your name and your story, where you're connected to something bigger than your job title. Marcus turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together. That sounds nice. It is. It's what I have here. What I never wanted to leave. She paused. I got accepted to graduate programs in Boston and New York, full scholarships for education policy. Everyone said I should go, that I was wasting my potential in a small town, but I didn't want that life, I wanted this one. Do you ever regret it? Not even once. I love teaching. I love knowing my neighbors. I love that when I go to the grocery store, it takes an hour because I run into people I care about. I love that my work matters in visible, tangible ways. She squeezed his hand. There's no judgment if that's not what you want, but for me, this is everything. They stayed at the restaurant until it closed, talking about books and travel and family and dreams. Marcus told her about the pressure of being the first in his family to go to college, the weight of expectation, the fear that if he stopped climbing, he'd fall all the way back down. Emma told him about losing her mother to cancer when she was 15, how it had shaped her understanding of what mattered, how it had made her want to pour love into the world while she still could. When Marcus finally drove Emma home, pulling up in front of a small craftsman bungalow with a porch swing and flower boxes, neither of them moved to get out. I had a really good time tonight, Emma said softly. Me too. Can I see you again? You're leaving Friday. I could extend my trip. Emma turned to look at him, her face serious in the dim light from the street lamp. Marcus, I really like you, but I need you to think about what you're doing. Don't blow up your life on a whim. Don't make promises you can't keep. Because I'm not looking for a summer fling or a long-distance thing that fizzles out in 3 months. I'm too old for that, and I know what I want. What do you want? Someone who's here, really here, not just visiting. Someone who wants the same kind of life I do, someone who's ready to build something real. She touched his cheek gently. I don't think you know what you want yet, and that's okay, but I can't be the thing you figure it out with. Marcus caught her hand, holding it against his face. You're right. I don't know what I want, but I know that being with you feels more real than anything in my life has felt in a very long time. That has to mean something. It does, but it's not enough on its own. Emma leaned over and kissed his cheek, soft and sweet. Think about it. Really think about it. If you're still here next week, call me. She got out of the car and walked to her door, turning to wave before going inside. Marcus sat there for a long time after her lights came on, his mind racing. He did not call her the next day. Instead, he spent it with his father, helping repair the fence in the backyard, the kind of simple physical labor he had not done in years. They worked in comfortable silence, and when they took a break, his father handed him a beer and spoke carefully. Your mother is inside planning your wedding to the Sullivan girl, just so you know. Marcus laughed. We went on one date. That's one more than you've had in how long? His father took a sip of beer. She's a good woman, smart, kind, knows what she's about. Those are rare qualities. She is all those things. But Dad, my whole life is in Chicago. My company, my work, I can't just walk away from that. Can't you, or won't you? His father's voice was gentle but direct. I worked at the mill for 40 years. Provided for my family, did honest work, no complaints. But if I'm honest, I stayed because it was safe. Because change scared me. I wonder sometimes what I could have done if I'd been braver. You're saying I should quit my job and move home for a woman I barely know. I'm saying you should think about what success really means. What kind of life you want to have lived when you're my age looking back. You've proven you can make money, build companies. That's done. The question is, what else do you want to prove? Marcus did not have an answer. Friday morning, his original departure date, Marcus was in his childhood bedroom packing when his phone rang. his assistant, Jennifer, sounding stressed. "Marcus, we have a problem. The Jacobson deal is falling apart. They want to renegotiate terms and they'll only talk to you. You need to get back here." The Jacobson deal was worth $12 million. 6 months of work. A major expansion into the West Coast market. The kind of thing he could not afford to lose. "I'll catch the next flight out," Marcus said automatically. He was in the rental car, halfway to the airport, when he pulled over to the side of the road. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel. He thought about Emma's smile, about her saying home was where you could be yourself without armor. About his father talking about safety and fear and regret. He thought about the view from his 40th floor office, beautiful and distant and utterly disconnected from life. Marcus made 3 phone calls. The first was to Jennifer, telling her to pull in the VP of sales to handle the Jacobson renegotiation, that it was time to trust his team to do what he'd hired them to do. The second was to his company's CFO, setting up a meeting for the following week to discuss transitioning some of his operational responsibilities. The third was to Emma. "Hey, it's Marcus. I know you said to call if I was still here next week. I'm still here, and I'm not leaving. Can we talk?" They met at the park at a picnic table under a massive maple tree. Emma was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt, her hair in a braid. She looked nervous. "What do you mean you're not leaving?" she asked. Marcus took a breath. "I'm not walking away from my company. But I'm restructuring how I run it. Promoting people I should have promoted years ago. Delegating things I've been controlling too tightly. I can work remotely most of the time, fly to Chicago when I'm actually needed. My company is doing well enough to survive without me micromanaging every detail." "Marcus, that's huge. Are you sure?" "No. I'm terrified, actually. But I'm more terrified of going back to that life and realizing in 20 years that I missed everything that mattered." He reached for her hands. "I'm not doing this just for you. I'm doing it for me, because I want a different life than the one I've been living. But I'm also not going to pretend you're not a huge part of why I want that change. You showed me what it looks like to live with purpose and joy and connection. I want that. I want you if you'll have me." Emma's eyes were bright with tears. "This is crazy. We barely know each other. Then let's get to know each other. For real, without an expiration date. Let's see what this could be. What if it doesn't work out? What if you realize small-town life isn't enough? What if you resent giving up your big Chicago CEO life? What if it does work out? What if this is the best decision I ever make?" Marcus pulled her closer. "I'm not asking you to promise me forever right now. I'm just asking for a chance, a real one." Emma studied his face for a long moment, then smiled through her tears. "Okay. A real chance. But Marcus, I need you to understand that this is my life. I'm not moving. I'm not changing careers. I'm not becoming someone different to fit into your world. I don't want you to. I want you exactly as you are, doing exactly what you're doing. I want to fit into your world if you'll let me." Emma kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, she was laughing. "My dad is going to lose his mind. He's been hoping I'd settle down for years, but I don't think he expected me to land a CEO. I'm just a guy who makes packaging solutions and is wildly out of his depth with the most amazing woman he's ever met. Smooth talker." Emma laced her fingers through his. "Come on. Let's go tell your mother before she hears through the grapevine. You know how this town is." Linda Webb did indeed lose her mind, but in the best way. She hugged Emma like a daughter, cried happy tears, and immediately started talking about holidays and family dinners. Robert shook Marcus's hand with quiet pride, and later, when Emma was helping Linda in the kitchen, said, "You did good, son. You did real good." The next few months were a whirlwind of change. Marcus found a house in Maple Ridge, a Victorian fixer-upper that needed work but had good bones and a huge backyard. He set up a home office and hired a local contractor, Tommy Rodriguez, to handle the renovations. He flew to Chicago once or twice a month for essential meetings, but otherwise worked remotely, finding that he was actually more productive without the constant interruptions of office life. His company thrived under the new structure. Turned out, empowering talented people to make decisions resulted in better outcomes than one exhausted CEO trying to control everything. The third quarter numbers were the best they'd ever had, but the real revelation was everything else. Marcus started running with Emma in the mornings, through neighborhoods where people waved from their porches. He helped at the youth center, teaching basic business skills to teenagers who needed job training. He had dinner with his parents every Sunday. He learned to bake bread, to fix a leaking faucet, to know his neighbors by name. And he fell completely, irrevocably in love with Emma. It was impossible not to. She was brilliant and funny and kind, with a steel core of strength beneath her gentle exterior. She challenged him, supported him, called him on his nonsense, and celebrated his wins. She introduced him to her world, and he found it richer than anything he'd left behind. By September, when school started again, Marcus was integrated into the fabric of Maple Ridge. He sponsored the youth center's fall programs, helped coach a youth basketball team despite having mediocre skills at best, and joined the Chamber of Commerce, where he actually provided useful advice to local business owners trying to grow. One October evening, after a day of helping Emma set up her classroom for parent-teacher conferences, they were sitting on his porch watching the sunset. Emma was curled against his side, his arm around her shoulders. "I've been thinking," Marcus said carefully. "Dangerous," Emma teased. "I'm serious. I've been thinking about what you said about home being where you can be yourself without armor, about being connected to something bigger than a job title. And you were right. This is home. You're home. I don't want to do life without you." Emma tilted her head up to look at him. "Marcus Webb, are you about to say something important?" "I'm about to say something terrifying." He shifted so he could face her properly. "I love you. I'm in love with you. I want to build a life with you here in this ridiculous town that I spent years running from and now can't imagine leaving. I want to marry you and have kids with you, and teach them to make your famous lemonade and read them books from your dad's store and watch them grow up knowing exactly where they belong." Emma's hand covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "That's a lot of wants. I have one more. I want to make you happy every single day for the rest of our lives. Or at least try really hard to do that." Marcus pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Emma Sullivan, will you marry me?" The ring was simple, a sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds the same color as her eyes. Emma looked at it, then at him, then started laughing through her tears. "You're insane. We've been dating for 4 months. I know, but I also know that I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life. I've spent years making calculated decisions, weighing risks and benefits. This isn't that. This is just knowing bone deep that you're it for me, but if you need more time, yes, you need more time, or yes, I'll marry you, you impossible man." Emma grabbed his face and kissed him hard. "Yes to all of it. The life, the kids, the lemonade, everything. Yes." Marcus slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands, then kissed her again, longer and deeper, full of promise and joy and relief. When they finally broke apart, Emma was beaming. My dad is going to point out that this is crazy fast. What are you going to say? That when you know, and I know. She settled back against him, admiring the ring in the fading light. Plus, you make really good life decisions when you follow your heart instead of your business plan. They got married the following June, exactly 1 year after Marcus had first seen Emma at her lemonade stand. The wedding was at First Presbyterian, with half the town in attendance. Emma wore her grandmother's lace dress and carried sunflowers from her own garden. Marcus wore a navy suit and could not stop smiling. Frank from the youth center officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. Marcus's parents cried. Emma's father gave a speech about how his daughter had always known her own mind and heart, and how grateful he was that she'd found someone who appreciated both. The reception was at the park where the festival had been, with strings of lights in the trees and a bluegrass band playing. They served lemonade and Emma's cookies alongside the traditional wedding fare. Kids ran around with sparklers. Neighbors danced under the stars. Marcus stood with his bride in the middle of it all, watching their community celebrate with them, and felt a completeness he'd never known existed. Happy? Emma asked, her head on his shoulder as they swayed to the music. Absurdly so, you. More than I can say. She pulled back to look at him. No regrets about the road not taken. The big Chicago life. Not even a little. This is the life I was supposed to have. I just took the long way getting here. 2 years later, Marcus was in his home office on a video call with his executive team when Emma appeared in the doorway, holding a small white stick with 2 pink lines. He immediately ended the call, ignoring Jennifer's protests about the quarterly review. "Are you serious?" he asked, crossing the room in 3 strides. Emma nodded, tears in her eyes. "We're having a baby." Marcus picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying at once. When he set her down, he placed his hand on her still flat stomach with a sense of wonder. "We're having a baby," he repeated, trying to make it feel real. "You're going to be a dad. Think you can handle it?" "Probably not, but I'll learn. I'm good at learning new things now." He kissed her softly. "Thank you. For this, for everything, for choosing me. Always. You're stuck with me now, CEO man." Their daughter, Grace Linda Webb, was born the following March during a late winter storm. She had her mother's eyes and her father's dark hair, and a set of lungs that proved she knew exactly what she wanted. Marcus held her for the first time and understood, finally and completely, what people meant when they talked about a love that changed everything. He thought building his company was his greatest achievement, thought making his first million, landing his first major contract, seeing his name in Forbes. Those were the markers of success. But holding his daughter while his wife slept, exhausted and beautiful in the hospital bed, Marcus knew this was it. This small, perfect person in his arms. The woman who'd shown him what life could be. The town that had welcomed him home. The community they were raising their child in. This was everything. Grace grew into a wild, joyful toddler who loved books like her grandfather, and baking with her grandmother, and following her mother around the elementary school like she owned the place. Marcus scaled his company responsibilities back even further, eventually selling majority ownership to his executive team and staying on as a consultant. It gave him the freedom to be present for all of it. First words, first steps, first day of preschool. He coached Grace's soccer team when she was old enough, despite still having mediocre athletic skills. He raided to her class at Emma's school. He expanded the youth center with a permanent endowment, ensuring it would be there for generations. He became the kind of person who knew everyone's name, who stopped for conversations at the grocery store, who was woven into the fabric of his community. 5 years after Grace was born, their son arrived. Benjamin Robert Webb came into the world quietly, thoughtfully, observing everything with serious dark eyes. He was his sister's opposite in temperament but her devoted companion, and watching them grow up together filled Marcus with a contentment so profound, it sometimes brought him to tears. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Marcus and Emma renewed their vows at the same church, surrounded by the same people, plus 2 kids and a decade of shared life. Afterward, they recreated their first meeting by setting up a lemonade stand at the summer festival, now with Grace and Ben helping to serve. "Remember when you thought this was a waste of time?" Emma teased, pouring lemonade into cups while Grace carefully counted change. "I was an idiot. You were lost. Different thing." She smiled at him over the heads of their children. "But you found your way home." Marcus looked around at the festival, at the town that had raised him and welcomed him back, at the family they'd built, at the life they'd created from one chance encounter at a lemonade stand. "Yeah," he said, pulling Emma close and kissing the top of her head. "I really did." The lemonade stand became a tradition. Every summer festival, the Webb family set up shop, selling Emma's famous lemonade and homemade cookies, with all proceeds going to the youth center. Grace and Ben grew up knowing that success meant contributing to your community, that wealth meant having enough to share, that home meant knowing where you belonged. Marcus never regretted leaving Chicago. His company continued to thrive under new leadership, and he remained involved enough to feel connected to the work he'd started while being free to live the life he'd chosen. He measured his days not in profits and losses, but in soccer games and school plays, in Sunday dinners and neighborhood barbecues, in the steady, quiet joy of being exactly where he was meant to be. 20 years after that first festival, Marcus stood at the same lemonade stand with silver threading through his hair and reading glasses he now needed for close work. Grace was in college studying education, following her mother's footsteps. Ben was in high school, tall and thoughtful, already talking about business school, but with a focus on social enterprises that made Marcus proud. Emma was beside him, older but still beautiful, still the center of his world. They'd weathered all the normal challenges of marriage and parenthood, the hard conversations and difficult seasons, but they'd done it together, with honesty and commitment and the deep knowledge that they were better together than apart. A young couple approached the stand, clearly new to town, and asked about the lemonade. "It's amazing," Marcus said with complete sincerity. "Made by the most amazing woman I know. Changed my whole life, actually." Emma laughed and elbowed him. "He's prone to exaggeration." "Not even a little," Marcus said, catching her hand and bringing it to his lips. "Best decision I ever made was buying a cup of lemonade at this festival 20 years ago." The couple smiled and bought 2 cups, and Marcus watched them walk away together, wondering about their story, hoping they'd find even a fraction of the happiness he'd found. As the sun set over Maple Ridge and the festival began to wind down, Marcus helped Emma pack up the stand while their kids visited friends and neighbors. The evening air was warm and perfect, filled with the sounds of music and laughter, the smell of summer and possibility. "Happy?" Emma asked, the same question she'd asked 1,000 times over the years. "Absurdly so," Marcus answered, the same way he always did. "You?" Emma looked around at the town she'd never left, at the life they'd built together, at everything they'd created from one chance meeting and a leap of faith. "More than I can say," she said, and kissed him as the fireflies began to dance in the gathering dusk. Marcus Webb had gone searching for success and found it in corner offices and executive titles. But he'd found something infinitely more valuable in a girl selling lemonade at a hometown festival. A life worth living, a love worth keeping, and a home worth never leaving again. The sweetest memory had become his entire life, and he'd never been more grateful for the detour that brought him back to where he truly belonged.